All right, it is not necessary that in order to have a good, just, valuable purpose that you have to be created for that. Now, I'm not denying that humans are created for by Allah for the purpose of worshiping alone. I'm just saying that if somebody took this unrestrictedly, they're going to actually fall into a problem. For example, Allah is eternal. He was not created for a purpose because He is eternal. Yet His purposes are just and worthy of pursuit and valuable despite not being created for a purpose because He's eternal. With human beings, although we don't really, I guess this is another example I gave, but being birthed is a type of coming into existence or a type of being created, if you're going to call it that, where somebody is coming out of someone else's privates, and it's not a creation like a desk, but it's a sort of a type of creation, one could argue. Anyhow, the point here is that if your parents intended to birth you for a bad purpose, like I don't know, massacring a race or living a materialistic lifestyle, it does not follow that you should do that just because you were created for that purpose. Allah's purposes, He is still doing valuable purposes and goals, even though He was not created for a purpose. His purposes are valuable, such as showing justice, wrath, uh, punishment, rewarding, mercy, kindness, patience, and so on. It's not necessary that he has to be created for a purpose, for that purpose to be quote unquote valuable, real, and he should do it. Why I mentioned this all because I think I give another example of a robot. If we created a robot that was conscious, if we would have built it with the intention to create it for an evil purpose, like for example, blah blah blah. Basically, if we created a robot, I don't know, to wipe out mankind, that does not follow that now it should follow that purpose because it was designed for that, and that if it does not follow that evil purpose for which it was designed, it has no purpose. Like we're going to clarify, what do we mean by no purpose? Do we mean it was not created for that purpose? Sure, but do we mean now it cannot choose a goal or purpose? Obviously, that's false. Obviously, it's false. You can choose goals and purposes which you were not created for. Okay, every person who sins is doing a goal or a purpose that Allah did not want or intend for him to die on. Like shirk, for example. Allah did not create you for the purpose of worshipping other than Him, but you are able to choose that goal or purpose. A goal or purpose is just like intending towards something. Okay, it doesn't require that you have to be created for that intent or that thing for you to do it. Of course not. You can be created for a completely different set of purposes, yet you choose a completely different opposing set of purposes. So you were created for worshipping Allah alone, yet you do shirk, you drink alcohol, you commit zina, all these other goals and purposes, and you could even love it and value it and die upon it. The point is that it's just this whole nihilism debate has a lot of weird false assumptions, and it's probably because people are vague in what they mean by life has no meaning. It just very vague, okay? If you mean by life has no meaning, as in you're an atheist or nihilist, oh, life was not created for a purpose. My life and your life, we were not created for a purpose. Well, I don't know, if you believe your parents created you, if you want to term it like that, they birthed you into existence for a goal, somebody might say, that is, you were in that sense created for a purpose. But anyway, this is irrelevant really, because the point here is, I guess, were you created to worship Allah alone? I don't care about these vague nihilist secular questions. It's so jahil, like they don't know about something. They're just asking such vague questions. Was I created for a purpose? That really does not clarify what purpose. Like even if you say yes or no, it does not clarify what you should be doing. Because you could, if you believe your parents quote unquote created you for a purpose by birthing you, that might be a stretch. I don't know that wording. It sounds off. But if you really believe that, then there you go. There's your answer. You were, at least for your parents. But this is like not necessarily what's moral. Your parents could have birthed you for nothing about worshipping Allah alone. They could have created you through birthing for a very secular lifestyle to live. That isn't worth it though. That isn't the right thing to do. The right thing to do, the right goals, the valuable goal to pursue is worshipping Allah alone, not a secular lifestyle. So it's we've got to really think deeply and reject the foundational assumptions of these debates because often they're wrong, And it's a shame because we keep just, I don't know, just speaking the vaguest ways that just does not help. Anyway, I think I just got ChatGPT. For an actual life to be valid, just, meaningful, what does that mean? Valuable, I'll say. Their being must have been created for that purpose. You're saying that assumption is false, and you're right. Your argument stripped down. Being created for a purpose is not necessary for having a real, just, or correct, or valuable purpose. Purpose can be discovered, chosen, rationally obligated, even if it was never intended by the creator, even if the creator had evil intentions. While Allah is a decisive counterexample, this is actually the strongest move. Allah was not created. Therefore, he was not created for any purpose. Yet, his actions are meaningful. His purposes are just. His goals are worthy, true, and binding, and valuable. They're good. They're morally good. They're just. So this rule, purpose requires being created for a purpose, is immediately false because Allah has purpose without being created, without creation. This alone breaks the rule. You make a subtle correct distinction. Birth / is not the same as desk-like manufacturing. Humans are not tools, but birth is still a type of coming into existence caused by others. That is true. Even if parents had selfish intentions, evil intentions, or no intention at all, that does not define what the human ought to do, my point. So origin is not necessary or does not determine obligation. Yeah, the commands of Allah do, and what justice is. The robot example, your robot example 12, if humans create a conscious robot, humans intend it to commit evil, it does not follow that the robot ought to do evil. That's a contradiction, because evil is what you ought not to do. So it doesn't make any sense to say you ought to do what you ought not to do. Okay? You should do what you shouldn't do. It doesn't make any sense. Why? Because moral obligation follows what is good, not what the creator intended. So that if the robot can reason, it should reject evil, even if evil was its design purpose, to show that moral purpose overrides creator intention. What one ought to do is determined by goodness and justice, not by the intentions necessarily behind one's origin. Or right purposes come from truth and goodness, not from how or why you were brought into existence. Why people get confused by meaning? People mix up three different things: origin, how you came into existence; intention of the originator, what others wanted from you; normative purposes, what you ought to pursue. They wrongly assume 1 and 2. Origin, how you came into existence; intention of the creator, what others wanted from you. You're showing that only 3, I guess, is independent. I guess that means just 3 is what matters to you. Okay, what matters about what your purpose is what's the right thing to do. This is kind of irrelevant what you were created for, but that if the creator has intended a right purpose, then that's relevant. Okay. A being can have just and meaningful purposes without being created. Therefore, being created for a purpose is not necessary for having a purpose. Even when a being is created, the creator's intention is not determined what is morally correct necessarily. Therefore, a being can and should pursue good purposes, even if it was not created for them or was created for evil purposes. Being an obligation comes from goodness and truth, not from origin. This is logically sound.